If you respected them that much, you wouldn't put it in the bloody goal, would you? So just fucking celebrate it. You scored. Like,
I'm with you on this, but name 5 teams from the Eredivisie.
Hello and welcome to the Mid-Table and Up podcast. On this episode we will be discussing our top 10 most unpopular footballing opinions. Please do comment down below, let us know what you think your unpopular opinions are and why. Whilst you're there, you might as well put your foot through the like button and subscribe, as well as follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, along with Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Our first co-host knows a thing or two about unpopular opinions. Mason Greenwood had a better year than Lewandowski apparently, according to this man. It's Matthew Lee. You right, Matt?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. I'm looking forward to hearing your list, to be honest.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to it too.
I'm looking forward to hearing Matt's list the most.
Like
some of yours,
mate.
I think I can predict. Some of Matt, I'm really worried as to what's going to turn up.
I hope to impress. That's all I've got to say. If me and you are still mates by the end of this, I think I've done something wrong. And I need to go back to the drawing board.
Well, to be fair, unless you proclaim or advocate for the slaughter of innocent puppies, I feel like we will still be friends regardless.
I can confirm that is not on the list. It was in the short list.
Can I just say, earlier this evening, Matt was talking about having gladiator pits.
Yeah, no, that was a great idea, George. So let me pitch it to you now, quick.
So, I mean, it's not so far removed from
people
this.
that do bad things. Sorry, we're completely derailed the intro. But basically,
No,
people that do bad things, not really bad things, because obviously they deserve prison time, but, maybe there's like a grey line. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but they've done bad enough things, gladiator pit to the death. No animals. Yeah. We agreed no animals. So just...
Oh yeah, there's no need to punish animals like that.
I think it would be great entertainment. I would go and watch it. I think everyone would like to say they wouldn't and be like, oh no, that's awful. But there's a deep urge, that primal gorilla monkey urge to just watch people attack each other.
So anyway, it's not too far removed from what you just said to there. That's all. That's the point I was
exactly.
making.
I don't know. I'd be more likely to vote for Matt's idea than slaughter puppies, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying he's going the wrong direction.
Our second co-host has a much better track record when it comes to unpopular opinions, but he falls down when it comes to Wayne Rooney's overhead kick. It's our resident tractor boy, Simon Bartlett. You alright, Simon?
Yeah, I'm good. I stand by it. That's what I'm going to say.
I know you do. You
after 9 years, I'm not going to fucking see this point now, am I? So...
Good. And I'm your final host, George Ellis. Along with my co-hosts, the only unpopular opinion that I have is that I believe my jokes are funny.
Absolutely, George. I'm glad that you the first stage is admitting that you have a problem. The next one is fixing it.
Exactly. I know, right. So how did we find making the list for this week, boys? Because I'm not going to lie, I think this was the hardest one for me anyway.
It was. I'm going to be really honest. I'm not sure if it's hard to judge what's unpopular to a certain degree.
I think that was why I struggled.
Yeah, and also kind of it's hard to rank them as well. What's the most unpopular to the least unpopular? But once I really started getting into it, I realised that I have a lot of opinions on football, and I'm just going to blurt them out and see kind of what sticks.
Yeah.
No, fair enough, mate.
Yeah, no, I agree with Matt. It's kind of hard. Some of mine, I don't know if they're unpopular or things that maybe are just less talked about and I feel need more focus, which maybe is unpopular in a way. As you say, it's hard to gauge what is actually truly unpopular and what's just an opinion. But I think I've gone for things that will create good debate and good chat, as well as stuff that maybe is a bit more surprising than that. So, what about yourself?
The reason why I kind of found it difficult is because I kind of felt that every time
your opinion's always right.
Kind of, yes. and not, I mean, just because I think I'm right, that doesn't make it popular, of course. So, yeah, I did kind of have that element to kind of consider. But as you said, it's very hard to quantify what is, without looking at a footballing survey, and even then, if you maybe don't agree with the results of said survey, you're going to question it anyway. But without looking at something like that, it's very difficult to quantify what is considered to be an unpopular opinion, other than, you know, like blatant things, really. So yeah, but no, I feel like I've got talking points anyway. So yeah, I don't think there's anything in here that anyone's gonna. Well, actually, I say that some of my stuff will trigger certain fans from certain teams, but I feel like we should throw that caveat out there because we're calling them unpopular opinions for a reason. So yeah.
So if they're not unpopular, it's, you know, you're not doing your job.
I tried to stay away from like teams, individuals, like, and go for some more thematic stuff around football rather than.
I've got a mixture, I would say.
I'd say I've got a mixture as well, to be honest with you, because there's one.
I've got a couple in there, but it was just because we talk about clubs and teams quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it's kind of going over some old ground, so I wanted to go for some more like stuff that we haven't really discussed.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, cool. So, Matt, would you like to kick us off with your number 10?
So my number 10 shouldn't be a very decisive one. And I would like to preface it by saying the words I picked to say here are important. And the reason I say that is that I'm saying Frank Lampard doesn't deserve the Chelsea job. That's my unpopular opinion. And I'm not sure, after the recent run of results in the Premier League, if it's... I'm not just doing it because he's done crap. I'm doing it because I don't think he deserved it 2 years ago or a year ago, whenever.
Yeah, so I'm going to. So my number 5, it wasn't about Frank Lampard explicitly, but I said top players shouldn't get top managerial jobs without the relevant experience.
Okay, yeah. So similar sort of thing.
It's the same argument.
I think so. Yeah, you are right. The two are very heavily linked because Lampard is effectively an example of your number 5, Simon. The thing that I will probably say is that, Matt, I probably somewhat agree with you. Lampard specifically probably wasn't, well, especially the way the results are going at the minute. Yeah, the way, he didn't. Let's be real. If you're going purely on merit alone, there's better CVs out there. You think of, say, what Brendan Rodgers is currently doing with Leicester. There's probably a whole host of...
Yeah, the time Poch was
at the time it would have been Celtic and stuff, but there would have been a lot of managers with a much more creditable CV than Lampard, who'd only had that 1 year at Derby. That being kind of said, though, I will say this: though I do agree that they probably shouldn't be necessarily the front runner. At least I'm speaking in general terms, in terms of Simon's point, rather than Lampard specifically. But I do get why clubs do appoint old legends, even if you kind of might think, there might be better players.
But it's not necessarily players that are just legends. This is what I'm saying about, like,
they're big names.
Just because they're big names, they get a big job. Like, should Lampard really have got the Derby job even? I don't think.
I would agree, but then would you kind of preface that with so regardless of the player, like the playing career the player had, when he retires and turns to management, what should be the jumping on point for you then, Simon?
So, I mean, I think there's a few ways you can do it. You can either start lower league and work your way through the leagues, or you come in as an assistant to somebody else or a coach to somebody else and learn your trade from a real, like, experienced manager. When you get a job, someone doesn't instill you as manager without any experience. They're like, you learn from this person, or you start at the bottom of a company and you work your way through the ranks. That, to me, like, football at the end of the day is the same. Like, you shouldn't just, based on some previous irrelevant experience, not irrelevant, but I think you can get a higher job than a player without the accolades. I agree that there should be some merit to it, but I just think that when you're instilled in big clubs, and it links to another point that really annoys me, and it's that it starts becoming their club, and this an issue I had with kind of Roy Keane at Ipswich. It was Roy Keane's Ipswich, so that's not Roy Keane's Ipswich. It's Ipswich, and he's the manager. Yeah, that's a different point. It's not actually on my list.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think what solidifies it is that how much of a business decision, and when I say business, I mean exposure, links to bigger clubs.
I mean, how often are you put on Sky?
Exactly.
Like Derby, when Frank Lampard got the managerial job, I reckon they're on Sky twice as much as they were the year before.
Well, and it's something in like Formula One teams as well, because a lot of drivers can get sponsors which help the team essentially make money. And I wonder how much of a factor that plays into someone like Derby, where they're like, do you know, who by the way should have been promoted, as we know, or should have won that playoff round. But how big of a decision it goes to, actually, should we just get a big name in? Because it might be something that the club has made a business decision on, because they've just got Rooney in as well.
Yeah.
And now they've just appointed him permanently.
Speaking on Rooney for a quick second, because again, I was going to say, really, where do you kind of think Rooney fits into all of this? Because obviously Rooney was a player manager before taking that role. So again, it's kind of different circumstances. It's not like, say, Lampard, who's been retired from playing professionally for a couple of years at that point. Rooney was still, even if he wasn't necessarily picking himself every week, he was still an eligible player to play.
I don't think he picked himself once. He basically, once they offered him the caretaker role, I don't think he played again.
Yeah.
So it wasn't okay. Like, he basically took the
I get that,
job
but he was at the club in a player capacity right up to that point.
I mean, I think that's a slightly different scenario, because if someone comes in, he was instilled as caretaker. He wasn't chosen as manager straight away.
So because Rooney's done well and they've awarded him the permanent job on the basis of that, that's more acceptable.
That's more acceptable. I would still argue it's probably still too early for him, but at least it wasn't a case of, we're going to give you a big 3-year contract, which is, I assume, what they did with Lampard.
Yeah.
On a lot of money. It's like, no, like, you can have the job for a while. Oh, you've done quite well. Right, now we can give you a bit of a longer contract and we can see where this goes.
Which is why we're not bringing Ollie's name into this.
Yeah.
Because as much as I do give him stick, he came in there and he did a decent job, and he was appointed, rightly or wrongly, or whatever your opinions on him may be.
I think hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Exactly.
But he also had more managerial experience getting that United job.
At the time, people were saying that he deserved it on a permanent basis. I think it's not... I mean, saying that, again, this season's so crazy, but up until early December or so, or even maybe late November, up until then, since becoming a permanent manager, people would say that Ollie hasn't worked out, and it wasn't just Rio Ferdinand is the famous one because of what he said after they knocked out PSG in the Champions League. Oh, Ollie's at the wheel, get him signed, all that kind of thing. But he wasn't alone. There was quite a lot of fans, not just Manchester United fans, but even neutral fans going, wow, he's got them playing here. He deserves something. And then the wheels kind of fell off.
Yeah.
So going back to Ollie, it wasn't his first managerial job. Yeah. He had success in Norway. He'd been around the block. He'd had a period at Cardiff which was very unsuccessful. Agreed. That was very odd, and that probably was the wrong decision by Cardiff to appoint him at that point with no Premier League experience. But he must have learned so much in that kind of 6 months he was there about the Premier League, about working with budgets, about all this kind of other thing. So unlike Lampard, who had one unsuccessful year at Derby, I think Ole had probably been a manager for 5 years, probably-ish, before he got the United job. So it's a slightly different scenario.
But I do agree, but would you say that 4.5 years in Norway and half a year in Cardiff is still enough to warrant you the Manchester United job?
No, I don't think it does, but it warrants it you more than one.
Even in a caretaker capacity, really, I did kind of think, come on, is there not a bigger name that you could find to take over to the end of the season?
I think you could say that of Chelsea last year, though, couldn't you? There was definitely bigger names that would have Chelsea
to be honest with
Chelsea
you,
job
though,
last year.
Yeah, there definitely were. There definitely were. But maybe the club were thinking Lampard could be our guy for 3-4 years, whereas when United got Ollie in, they definitely weren't thinking that at all.
They could have had Lampard for 3-4 years, but he would have waited for that job. That's not
True.
a job they needed to get him in the door now, otherwise they weren't going to get him. He would, if they'd said, no, look, we like you, but stay at Derby 2 or 3 more years, learn a bit more, learn your principles, learn how you want to play the game. Because I feel a little bit sorry, because it's like trial by fire at Chelsea. If he was successful there, he could be successful anywhere. Like that's
which is I think why again, benefit of hindsight, but I think it's why they've been so erratic this season, but also last season. Last season they were banging in goals and then they were just off. They looked flat. It was really bizarre.
Well, last season you would say that Lampard, at the very least, warranted another year because he had no transfers. They lost their best player, and he largely had a team full of kids at his disposal. So, of course, when you've got that much youth in the team, they're always going to concede goals that they probably shouldn't. They're always going to drop points they probably shouldn't. But he still reached the cup final and got top 4. So when you factor all of that in, you've got to say that Lampard did do a good job last season. But this year, clearly, in terms of trying to bed in all these new players at once, all these big money signings, he is out of his depth. And I watched the game yesterday against Leicester, and the thing that was the most worrying for me, it wasn't even tactics or the starting lineup or whatever. It was the fact that the players just didn't look like they were trying. Because you can get away with making tactical errors and maybe not selecting the right starting lineup. But if the players don't look like they're going to run for you anymore, if the players don't look like they're going to play for you anymore, that for me is when I think the writing is on the wall. And obviously you brought up Lampard, Matt. I would say, especially right now, I would say him being not the right man for the Chelsea job is actually probably quite a popular opinion. Because who right now, even the most diehard Chelsea fans, though they're wishing that Lampard's fortune will change because they love him so much, even the most diehard Chelsea fans, if they've got a realistic head on their shoulders, they're going to be thinking he's going to have to go.
For £200 million outlay, 7th or 8th place, wherever they are, it's not good enough. Like that's just facts.
This is the thing. If you'd have said to me at the start of the season that 19 games in, West Ham will be 3 points ahead of Chelsea, I'd have laughed at you. And I know the
that
league
would have
has
been
been
an
crazy.
unpopular opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. The league has been crazy this season, but come on, like we've got no right to be 3 points ahead of Chelsea, and Chelsea really should be somewhat embarrassed that we are.
You talk about that Leicester game yesterday. I think what was very telling was how good Leicester were compared to Chelsea. Leicester were fantastic. If you gave Brendan Rodgers that Chelsea squad, they would be
would
up
get
there.
more out of
They
them.
would be right up there. I have no question about that.
Yeah, if we're going to be specific about Frank, I think he lacks man management skills that a more experienced manager has. I think that's why last year he did quite well with a squad that is pretty inexperienced. For a lot of them, it was the first.
I think the thing is, last year, George, you talked about a lot of youth players coming through. Yeah. These are people that probably idolised Lampard from 10.
Yeah.
So they probably did run through brick walls for him.
Yeah.
Now we've got a few foreign lads from Germany. Maybe
they
don't respect him as much. They don't have that same and they think he's a bit maybe weaker. I don't know. That's just me flagging some opinions.
No, I do get what you mean. I don't think that even the newer players, I don't think they could really underestimate or not understand the calibre of player that Lampard was. You are talking about a guy that's won everything there is to win.
You don't have the same affinity with him.
I know. I know.
You tend to respect him more as a manager. You look at him as a manager rather than thinking of Lampard the player first.
The thing that I will say is, and I will want to go on to say Arteta, because I feel like Arteta kind of links into this. But with I think the thing with Lampard is because where he was such a good footballer, and I don't think he's been the only one in this, I think at times Glenn Hoddle and Ruud Gullit were susceptible to the same thing. Where Lampard had such a high standard, such a high work rate, and was, he was naturally very gifted as well. Not as classy as, say, a David Silva or someone like that, but he was, technically still a very, very, very good player. And those kind of players, when they then become a manager, they almost expect other players to be able to just hit the heights that they did because they did it, when in actuality...
But he's at Chelsea. He actually should be expecting those levels
I do agree. I do agree with that. But this Chelsea team, at the minute anyway, it's not got the character and it's not got the skill that Mourinho team had when they were winning titles in 04 and 05.
But I think that links back to his transfer strategy. He went out this summer and bought 3 attacking midfield players and a centre forward. And he signed a 36-year-old Thiago Silva as the centre-back choice. That's a management decision. There's an unbalanced squad.
No, yeah, I do agree. 100% agree on that. You would argue that Thiago Silva has been the most successful one, but when they were buying those players, because everyone was kind of going, oh, bloody hell, they bought some good players there. But I was sat there thinking, well, where is Mason Mount going to figure in all of this? And Pulisic and everyone else. But I mentioned Mason Mount. He's arguably been their best outfield player this season. He's certainly up there.
He's a very, very good player.
It looked like, to me, that he was playing FIFA. Like, he was just buying big names that I'm not entirely convinced that they're going to fit into a system together. I think they could, but I'm not entirely convinced.
Well, yeah, I think that his biggest thing is he doesn't know what his best team is, and that's evident by the amount he changes it quite often. It's such an unsettled side.
I also think that he really struggles when his team isn't performing. Like, I don't feel like he's got the tactical nous to make a change or make a big decision that's going to change the game in their favour. Seems like once they're behind, he just seems to just be like, keep doing the same thing. Which I get. I get managers need to have a philosophy. But like, there were games where Giroud is sat on the bench, they're whipping all these crosses in and no one's getting anywhere near them, and he's leaving Olivier Giroud on the bench, and it feels like, I mean, as a fan, it looks quite obvious, but as a manager, maybe not.
But it's made worse when you think that Giroud has been one of the most effective players this season. But then that in itself is almost another headache, because Lampard is going to be sitting there thinking, I've signed all this attacking talent, yet the guy that's been the best attacker for us is a 33-year-old Frenchman that we really want to get out the door. Yeah. and then it raises such a issue for him then, because then he's thinking, do I keep sticking with the new players I've bought, or should I go for the guy that's actually getting me the results now and more likely to be reliable? But it's a bit of an interesting one, and it's a good topic, to be fair. And as I said, I wanted to talk about Arteta just because you did mention about managers being an assistant first and getting some kind of an experience. And though I agree to a point, and it's probably somewhere in the middle of this comparison that I'm going to make, but when Arsenal were doing really poorly about a month or so ago, there was that kind of meme that, Arteta's just putting out the cones for Pep Guardiola in training, which is obviously clearly undermining the role of an assistant manager, let's be real. But at the same time, though, there is such a big jump between being an assistant manager to being the manager.
Look, I don't
like
disagree.
Steve McLaren was the assistant manager of Man United when they won the treble. But Steve McLaren is a fucking awful manager.
Well, later on, I mean, his career at Middlesbrough was very good, which got an England job. I mean, they got to the Cup final. But Gareth Southgate. But you think Gareth Southgate was Steve McLaren's assistant at Middlesbrough? So I think it is a route that players can use. I think the Arsenal job was a step probably too big from assistant manager.
Where should Arteta have started at then? If
he'd
any
earned
job
the
was
right
available,
to start a championship club, probably. To have that pedigree, he'd earned that right, or maybe a lower league Premier League side.
Okay.
I mean, you could ask them, offensive Arsenal fans, and say that they haven't been a challenger for a while, so maybe they count as like mid-table Premier League. But
God, they will hate hearing that, but you're probably right, to be honest.
You're probably right. Looking at the squad.
But yeah, so I think he'd earned the right to bypass a few of the steps up the ladder. If you look at like the league, because if you think of how, again, I think of how like maybe a business would be run. Like you'd ride up with somebody, and they would bring you up a certain level, and then eventually you do have to step out on your own if you want to. Like that eventually is your path. I mean, some people aren't cut out for it. You say Steve McLaren wasn't. I agree with you, he wasn't. But you don't know that until you do it. You have to do it first and try.
I
but you earn the right to start at a high level, having got that experience.
Yeah, I do agree with what you're saying. I just kind of feel like maybe if you're going to start that low from no experience, again, assistant manager, I know it is all experience, of course. God, I feel like I'm at a job application, but yeah, it's a bit of a funny one. It is a bit of a funny one.
You learn a lot about the pressures of being a manager by being near one. Like, how do they handle pressure? Like, it's not just the tactical side of the game. Because I think the tactical side of the game, there's hundreds and hundreds of people that can do that. Like, there'll be coaches that do that. There'll be, like, analysts that do that. It's how you deal with certain situations really, and pressure and how do you manage scenarios, probably more than anything, which is the important skill. Yeah. Which being around someone like Pep, particularly, like absolutely top draw, that calmness, that ability to think clearly when stuff isn't going your way, ability to make the right decisions at the right time. That's something which, being near someone doing that superbly, can only make you better equipped to do that job yourself. So that's why I think he'd earned the right to start at a high level. Not that I'm necessarily saying Arsenal was maybe a touch far for that, perhaps, but he had the connection, which also is what
I was going to say. He had that again. I just feel like a former player, like, because let's be real, Lampard would probably never have got a job at the caliber of Chelsea if it was any other team in and around that area.
You're talking about a failed Championship manager getting a Champions League job. That's what happened. If you take the name out, that's what happened.
You're very, very right.
So you're right. It would never happen. No one's talking about I don't know. I'm trying to think like Chris Coleman getting the Liverpool job or something. Like that's kind of
exactly
the levels we're talking about. So that's why I think. And that's why I say, so if you start at a lower level, it's not like a case of, well, you've learned by being rubbish. Like, eventually you do need to start being successful. Yeah. You can't just be like, well, he was rubbish at Newport, but at least he's got experience now, so we can hire him. No, you need to prove yourself as well.
Yeah. No, okay, fair enough. So while we're still on the topic of Chelsea, I'm going to stroll into my number 10 here because it's kind of somewhat linked, but not really. It's only really linked in terms of club. I am going for... My unpopular opinion is that I don't think in his time in the Premier League, Eden Hazard was ever the best Premier League player.
Well, it's big.
That's a big call. Well, what I'd ask is, what you're saying is that you think there was always someone better than him in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think there was always at least one player that was better than him, to be honest with you.
I agree he was overhyped. He won Player of the Year, though, didn't he? Definitely.
He did win Player of the Year in 2015. When they won the league that year. But even then, I kind of feel like Costa was equally as important in that title win. Don't get me wrong, Hazard was brilliant for them that season, and he was brilliant for them when they won it in 17 as well.
I mean, it's kind of hard for us to determine because obviously when you watch him week in, week out, it's a bit different than only seeing certain games.
But what I was going to say is quite a lot, though.
Yeah, as we all did, but I'm just saying that people will say like maybe you don't see his influence on like the lesser games, like when they play Brighton on a Tuesday or like games that aren't televised. But I agree, his numbers were never at a level that Chelsea fans seem to think they were at because they were putting him up there with Messi and Ronaldo and Gareth Bale at the time. But that's what Chelsea fans are doing. They're saying like, "Oh, top 3 in the world." I'm like, really though? Like, really? Do you actually believe that? Like, he was not at that level, and I don't think he was even close to that level. So I agree with you in that sense that Chelsea fans definitely overhyped him. Do I agree that there wasn't a year where he was the best player in the league? I actually think probably his last season was his best one.
That's what I was just going to say,
I would say that his last season was his best season in the Premier League, certainly. And even the year before that, he'd also done really well, to be honest. But I just think, again, when you kind of look at the numbers that Mo Salah had got and what Kevin De Bruyne was doing at Man City in his last couple of years at Chelsea, I just really can't. When people were saying, "Oh, he's the best player in the Premier League right now," I was really thinking, are you? I mean, because to be honest with you, at the same time, and I know slightly different type of players, but I think in his last season, maybe the year before, Raheem Sterling was hitting the same kind of numbers as Hazard, and they played the same position. I know you could argue that Sterling plays in a team that's more, basically a better team that's more attack-minded, but...
Yeah, I think it's that ability to do it on his own.
Yeah. But no, I don't think that's massively unpopular. I think what I would say with...
I think it's unpopular amongst Chelsea fans.
Yeah, it is unpopular amongst Chelsea fans, but I think he was overhyped. I think he was still a fabulous player.
No, that's not George. George isn't like you. I reckon every year he was probably second or third. To your point, isn't that he wasn't good.
Possibly, as I said, the year that he won, I think the year that he did win the PFA, I do. As I said, he was brilliant that year. I just also feel like Costa was just Oh man, he was so important to that team because if anything, he almost enabled Hazard to be better because defenders would get preoccupied with him. They'd get into a bit of a scrap or something, and then Hazard, they'd just get the ball to Hazard and he'd beat the man. And I'd be like, he's beating the man because Costa's gone and grabbed the guy's nuts or something, like, as I said, obviously it's a team game and everything, and he did win the PFA Player of the Year in 2015. I think Kante won it in 17, which I think was the right decision. I did think Kante was more important to that Chelsea team that year than Hazard was.
Because Kante won Football Writers and PFA Player of the Year that year, didn't he? So
yeah, he did.
He was superb. I mean, he won it back to back, didn't he? The Writers Player of the Year with Leicester the year before. But I agree that Hazard was not as influential to Chelsea as Kante was that year, certainly.
Yeah. Certainly in the last couple of years at the club, while I did think he was very good, I didn't think he was as good as Salah, Mane, De Bruyne, Sterling. I just thought that they were, and their position in the leagues. I know that again they were in better teams than Hazard was, but I do think that, as I said, for years I was kind of just crying out for him to maybe kind of have that sort of Ronaldo-esque season. Or at least get in and around the... When you think that Salah broke the goals record in his first year at Liverpool, and Liverpool didn't even win anything that year. Yeah, I was just hoping that he would hit something like 25 league goals, and I don't think he ever did.
Which you feel he had the ability to do.
Yes, 100%.
And I think that's probably why you put it down, is because actually he probably frustrated you more than... Like, you don't care that Hazard wasn't the best player in the league.
No.
But it's frustrating watching a guy with all that talent and you think can do it, not doing it. It's like, you just want a bit more from them and go,
exactly.
Fantastic player, but it's like, you can get more out of yourself.
Exactly. I'd always look at Hazard and think, you're even in his really good years, I was thinking, you're producing about 80% of what your talent is capable of, even in his best years. And then obviously in his really bad years, like the year when Leicester won the league, that's dreadful. As I said, when we did our first ever episode, best ever Premier League players of all time, if you were only going to include players from the last 10 years, I don't think you could not have Hazard in there.
Yeah, which goes back to my point. Like, he's always there or thereabouts. He's just not ever been at the top for you.
Yeah, as I said, I think he's a great player. I think he's a class player. I've always been... sometimes I've lent, depending on the form he's in, I've lent on, yes, he is world class, but then if he dips again, I'm like, well, no, he's not. If he sustained it longer, then he would be. But yeah, no, I think he's a great player, Hazard. I just don't think he was ever the best Premier League player in his time in England.
Fair enough.
Okay, fair enough. So
brilliant.
Simon.
So, yeah, you're number 10.
My number 10. Okay. Have you all seen the video of MLS penalties from, like, the 90s?
Yes, I have. Oh, no, I can't believe you're going here.
I am going here.
The video of what?
MLS penalties from, like, the 90s.
No.
So basically, they do them, like, where you have the ball on halfway and you run and have a one-on-one with the goalkeeper.
That was a thing they did in the MLS.
That's what they did in the MLS. I don't think that is a terribly bad idea. I don't see why that's not a good idea. Because it gives the keeper more options, it gives the striker more options, and it gives more chances of fuck-ups. It's more exciting to watch. Like, rather than just watching a player go up and smash a ball into the net, you look in the keeper's eyes, it's a lot... I think there's a lot more parts to it. Like, players can choose to go around the goalkeeper, they can choose to have shots from range, they can choose more options rather than just having to hit a ball from 12 yards. You don't have to worry about the keeper being on the line, the keeper can, like, rush... And then there's tactics for the goalie, rather than just like, you have to stand on your line and guess. No, you can come out and rush the centre forward. You can choose to stay back and psych him out that way. I think it gives the goalkeepers more of an ability to show off their reflexes and their ability to be good goalkeepers. But I don't think it should apply for penalties awarded in-game, but for penalty shootouts, I think it's a good idea.
I like it.
Okay, that's an interesting point you made right at the end there, because I was going to say... If you're fouled in the box, especially if you're fouled something, like basically on the penalty spot, I do think it's then unfair to say to the attacking team, you've then got to go all the way back to...
Which is not, again, this isn't, like, the MLS only did it for penalty shootouts. They didn't do it for, like, regular penalties. So, I agree. Because at that point, you penalise somebody. So you shouldn't have, as a keeper, you shouldn't have an advantage because your team has been penalised. So in that regard, just take a normal penalty, 12 yards. But for shootouts, where the keepers are on a hiding to nothing, basically, they've got no options apart from guess. Like here, they just have more of a chance. They've got a bit more that they can do. They can try and work a bit harder. They can try psych people
It lets
out.
sweeper keepers become a bit more of a thing.
Yeah, like imagine Manuel Neuer in a MLS style shootout. It'd be fantastic. Like him rushing centre forward.
I do agree. It would be quite interesting. The other thing that would also be interesting about it is that it would, it would bring a whole new dynamic to kind of the way that players prepare for penalties.
Yeah, and I think it's more skillful being able to finish a one-on-one compared to taking a penalty where the keeper can barely do anything, like can't even step off his line anymore. That takes that out as an issue as well. And you think that maybe you get more chances as a goalkeeper because if someone takes a heavy touch in that regard, you can just come out. How many bad penalties do you see just go in because the keeper's had to dive one way and it just rolls in the other corner? Do that in that kind of scenario, I think the keeper has a better chance of saving it.
Yeah, it makes it more of a 70% chance of scoring, more to like a 50-50.
And as I say, also, it gives this player taking the penalty more options. You've got more ability. You think, right, do I want to go this way? Do I want to go left or right? I want to try and take it round the goalkeeper? Should I try and chip the keeper? Take the shot from outside the box or take it inside the box? I think it adds another level of complexity to a penalty shootout, which would be very, very entertaining to watch.
Do you know what? That is a cracking idea. I'm just because I never knew about the 90s.
It looked very strange. I admit it looked really weird.
It looks like training,
but I think that's partly because it's the MLS in the 90s, so the players aren't actually that good.
Yeah. But
so
it's
that's
just the way
partly
it's
why
set
it looks a bit odd. I think if you've got good players doing that, I just think imagine Harry Kane taking the ball from halfway. Right, you've got a one-on-one. Where are you going, Harry? Bottom corner either side. Are you going to go inside the box, outside the box? You've got keeper charging at you. I just think it takes a bit more skill as well as an attacker, rather than just blasting the ball in from 12. You can just hit a penalty hard and score. You don't need to be a good player to take a penalty.
Well, often it's more about composure than being the best footballer. Because I love Mark Noble to death, but Mark Noble doesn't necessarily take the best penalties in the world. But what he can do,
I think he's pretty good, to be honest.
I think he's good, but I think it's not that his shooting ability is outrageous; it's that he's got such good composure. I think it's just as much that as he can strike a ball and hit it in the right area.
The thing is, because I quite like penalties, kind of the way they are. I do agree. The thing with the line is a nonsense. Let's be real. The thing with the line not being able to be a millimetre off I think that's a joke. Let's be honest about that. The thing that I really like about penalties though is I feel like it's a lot more from 12 yards anyway. It's a lot more personal, and I think it requires possibly, I want to say, a little bit more bottle.
I actually don't think that's true.
I get what you mean in the effect of that if it's a good penalty, it's a goal. I get what you mean in that sense, because it's so difficult it is difficult for goalkeepers.
Well, you're more likely to score than not, statistically.
Yeah, no, of course you are. When you get a penalty, there's a reason why you celebrate it like it's a goal, because you're expecting to score from that. I just kind of like, as I said, I kind of just like the tension, especially in a shootout as well. It's that walk from the halfway line.
Thing is, George, this is like doing the walk with the ball at your feet. How many times would a player cock that up, just having to dribble the ball to the goal
with
all that nerves and all that nervous tension
pelting at you?
Yeah,
and as I say, if you're nervous walking out to take a penalty, you put your foot through it and you can just score.
I think that one's more of a. I think that one's more of a preference thing. I kind of feel like it, as you said, Matt. It seems so odd, and as you said, it probably doesn't help that it was fucking shitty MOS players.
It'd be interesting to see. We should do it for a season, see what it's like.
Do it for a season. But then the only issue is if we then reverted back to normal penalties, whatever happened that season, everyone would go, "Oh, it's bollocks," because the penalties were fucked. But no, as I said, I just kind of like that. That almost, I feel like it's more personal when it's just the taker and the goalkeeper,
but that's all it is still. It's just
no. I get that,
forwards.
but I think
the yardage gives it another dynamic.
I know you said they've got to walk with the ball, but where it's not taking, because you know that it begins then and there, you're not you've not really got time to think. You just kind of react. Whereas so many players, I think, in that penalty shootout, by the time they've walked from the halfway line to the spot, they've already psyched themselves out. Whereas it really depends on the type of player, obviously.
But that's the same issue. Like, how many times do you see a player go through one-on-one and completely fuck his lines? But for the same exact reason.
I think it really.
This is exactly what this is.
I think that's just kind of a preference thing. Like, ultimately, that this penalty idea. I like penalties. I like penalties the way they are.
I think people dismissed it very readily because it looks weird. I don't think people gave it enough credence because it looks a bit.
I'm with Simon. I agree. I think it looks weird and it's a different way of thinking. And I think we're always very hesitant for any changes to the game. But this one might not be such a bad one. And besides, remember, it's only going to be in cup competitions because it's going to be penalty shootouts. So it's only the FA Cup and the EFL Cup that is really going to impact. I say, do it for a season. Let's see what it's like. And it might be brilliant. And if it's shit, then we just scrap it.
Nah, man, I'm not on that. If you think it'd be better, if you think it'd be more fun, as I said, I think it's purely a preference thing. I don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
So moving.
I think that's a valid shout for an unpopular opinion, though.
Absolutely. No, I like that.
Right, Matt, you're number 9.
My number 9. I don't think it should be that. So it started off as something else, but I've kind of worked it around. So it started off around Jack Grealish, who
right.
Fantastic.
That's who gave me kind of the inspiration for this.
You mean the guy you'd like to meet?
The guy I'd like to meet, and I'd like to meet him and have a chat about this particular topic, is that I think diving deserves a harsher punishment and should be subject to VAR review. And what I mean by harsher punishment is it should be given out more readily, I think is a better way of probably phrasing it. Because and it's not just Jack Grealish, I see lots of players diving. I think I see VAR catching lots of players diving at times, and I just don't see it happen enough. And I think the problem is it's just spoiling the game. And when you con referees, you can just build up a bad reputation for yourself. So,
mate, I 100% agree with you, but I just don't think it's an unpopular one, mate. On both, honestly, I was expecting to come here today. I know we're still early on, but I was expecting to come here today and think, fuck me, what has Matt put on his list this time? But no, the first two things you've put, I think, are not only right, but I don't think they're that unpopular either.
I'm going to be honest. They get worse.
Okay. We're all looking forward to that.
So I want my 9th most unpopular opinion.
The thing is, I think diving's one of those things where when it goes against you, you feel absolutely outraged. But when your players do a little bit of dark art stuff, you never as worried, are you?
No, of course not.
And that's why it's kind of a part of the game now. Like, I know it's not good. And it's not good, and you shouldn't do it.
I think it's
but
something that should be part of the game.
Do I think that my team should be trying to do it? Yes, I absolutely do. Yeah. If we can get away with it, let's absolutely try and contact
referee. Absolutely. It's like anything. If you can get away with anything, then yes. But I think for the game, I agree.
Yeah, no, and I agree that it is part of the game, but I wish it wasn't, and I kind of wish that the Premier League, not just the Premier League, but UEFA and FIFA in general, would kind of clamp down on it because, and again, it's why you get all these players falling over because someone's just glared at them. It's not on.
It's much harder for the EFL to clamp down on it because they don't have the advantage of VAR replays.
Yeah.
VAR replays should pick
even
up
without
diving.
VAR, you could just do things retrospectively.
That is true. They can do that. And they should do that.
I know that might not help in the game result, but if you know that it could potentially, if you're going to get, say, a minimum of a 3-game ban for simulation or feigning an injury, you know that then it's not, unless it's like a cup final or something, you know in that moment it's not worth it.
Feigning an injury is less bad for me than diving.
Oh no, I hate feigning an injury. I can't stand it. I think that's worse. I'd rather someone dive. I really do think that's worse.
Hold on. Why do you think that's worse?
Because I tell you, because no one, right? If you're just, if someone's just put your arm on your shoulder or, maybe even just gone to push you away, I'm sorry, but the level of force they use is not enough to knock someone to their feet or not enough to have someone go down as if they've been shot. It's not. Whereas at least a dive in the moment.
At the point there's contact, is it a dive?
No, it's not dive, but it's not dive.
I think this is the issue with scrapping diving.
Here's the thing, right? Because as I said, like a dive, like if there's contact, it's maybe not a dive, but it's maybe not a penalty. It really depends on the situation.
That's what I'm
it's so
saying.
subjective. But simulate, like when I talk about faking an injury, I do think that's worse, because you're not only trying to maybe get a decision, but you're potentially also trying to get someone wrongfully sent off. Like, look at the Rivaldo thing in 2002. That's scandalous. That's scandalous. The ball was knocked back to him. It hit his thigh. He's gone down holding his face, and the player got sent off for that. That, for me, at least diving in the box to try and win a penalty, you kind of go, oh, he's just being a bit cheeky trying to get a penalty. But to get someone sent off for that.
When you said feigning injury, I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking when a team's winning like 1-0 in the 90th minute, and like your centre forward goes down, clutching his hamstring, being like, ooh.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine,
and that's why I said it's fine, because but that's feigning injury. That's still feigning injury.
But I would say that's more also. That's just slowing the game down. Clever play. That's not.
But that's
out.
feigning injury, George. You can't deny that.
But that's not.
It's faking injury.
That's not someone putting their head into someone and then the player going down as if they've been shot. It's one thing to in the same way that you don't give the ball back to the opponents when you're 1-0 up in the 90th minute, even if it's their ball when you've kicked it out for a throw. You don't give it back to them, do you? You let them. But there's, that's just running the clock down. Running the clock down isn't the same as intentionally trying to get someone sent off for something that
so you're happy with some feigning injury and not others.
No, it's not like it's not the same thing, is it? It's not the same thing. It's one thing trying to get someone intentionally sent off when they've done nothing wrong.
I think that's not feigning injury. That's simulation at that point. That's not.
I think we're talking about two. That's what I mean. Like, for me, feigning injury is like what Simon said. It's like, 90th minute, hamstrings kind of pulled. I think what George, you're talking about is when you basically you do simulation to try and increase the effect of or to influence a referee's decision.
You hold your face.
That's an extreme example of it. That's simulation.
If you're holding your face, though, you are effectively pretending that you're injured, because you're acting as if the players hit you hard enough to really damage you when they haven't.
But you can't then say that the other thing isn't feigning injury, because it is. If you're not injured and you pretend to be injured, that's feigning injury.
No, it is, but like simulation. Then, if that's how you want to word it, like that.
But that's what I mean. That's why I said feigning injury is less bad than diving, because that's what my instinct was.
Yeah.
A striker running the clock down and game management.
When I said feigning injury in the context of someone pretending that they've been smacked in the face when they've not. That's what I meant in it.
Yeah, so I think we agree. It was just a bit of miscommunication. That was a good long conversation to get to that point.
No, it was no, but yeah, no, that's fair. But yeah, no, as I said, Matt, like going back, I don't think that your point is unpopular at all. I think, and as I said, I agree with it as well.
Yeah, for me, it's just right now VAR isn't used to enforce it when I think it should.
Yeah.
I guess. So moving on to Simon, your number 9.
Yeah, can I have my number 9 if you want? My number 9 is a real bugbear of mine. I think that players should always celebrate against their old teams.
Oh, you do, didn't you?
I absolutely cannot stand this. Oh, I need to respect my own team. I was only there for like 3 months on loan and played twice, but they're my old team, so I need to just be like, no. I mean, personally, I find it disrespectful to the club you're playing at now. A bit. I will caveat that with there are very, like, if you played somewhere for like 10 years, like Lampard, and against Chelsea, I can just about stomach that.
Yeah.
Like, that is a very extreme special case. But on the whole, I cannot stand this. Let's just go there and be like, because what's always weird is everyone jumps on them and they just stand there and it looks like, it's like, well, everyone else is celebrating and you just look like a fucking weirdo just standing there, like having everyone jumping on you.
Yeah, just be like, oh, I scored, damn it.
So, you know what?
If you respected them that much, you wouldn't put it in the bloody goal, would you? So, just fucking celebrate it. You scored. Like, everyone else would love to be in that position and score a goal. Like, just celebrate it properly. I don't think that the fans of the other team, I don't think respect you more for doing it either.
No. I think once you've gone, you've cut ties with them.
Yeah, but no, you know what? Actually, I do disagree there. I do think not everyone, because some people will just be of your mindset of, oh, they've scored, they should just celebrate. But I do think there are certain fans that almost take pride in the fact that their former player hasn't celebrated against them. whether it's
Weirdos.
I think
don't get it.
No, you have tickled me with this one, but I think the thing with this is I think it really I just think that the players should do what they want when they score, whether they if they want to jump up and down and do a normal celebration against their old team. I think if that's what they want to do, they're entitled to do that. I also think that
of course they're entitled to do it. I can't force them to not do it. It just really winds me up.
No, but I think if they want to do that, then it's fine. I don't think there's anything disrespectful in them celebrating against their former club. But on the flip side of that, if they did score and didn't want to, it's this idea of maybe lauding it in the opposition's face, that kind of thing. Because some people, even if they haven't been there that long,
but there's a difference between celebrating and lauding in someone's face.
But
a normal celebration,
they can blend into it, that kind of thing. It blend into one almost, but
I think most fans they'll respect you regardless either way. If they liked you going in and you celebrated against them, I don't think that would be like a turning point to be like, oh, we hate them. I just think fans would have made their opinion on the player once they've gone.
I do think some fans would. I'm not saying that everyone would, but I do think some fans would.
I think that's
for sure.
I think there's a lot of fans that are very sentimental about showing respect to where you came from.
But then football's the wrong game. Football's not a game built on respect.
Yeah, no, that's exactly
It's built on antagonism. It's built on having competition.
Yeah, no, I agree.
To be fair, no, I would say that actually there should be an element, not necessarily in goal scoring, because as I said, I think it really depends on I think that the player should do what they want to do when they score, if that's pay respect, or if that's paying respect to the other team or not. The ones that really do annoy me are the ones that were there on loan for 5 minutes.
It's like, you owe that club so little.
But I don't know, because, again, it really depends on their mindset, because they might think that even if they were only there for half a season or so, they might think, I needed that to get me to where I am. It really depends on how they would look at it.
Just celebrate your goals.
Yeah.
Just to
enjoy it. Does this come from a personal place? Does this happened to a player at Ipswich that's made you
what, but that would be a player that...
either way, have a player come to you when you've played them and that or... So it's not come from a personal experience, it's just generally you think it.
No, I mean, but you talk about the respect, scorers could be disrespectful in celebration regardless of who they fucking played for.
Yeah.
But I just think that... I think what annoys me about it, probably more than anything, is me scoring a goal. I will never have that rush and that emotion of scoring a goal, playing professional football. And I kind of feel I think what annoys me is, I know in that situation I'd want to go fucking nuts and fucking mental because I scored a professional football goal. And you see them it's cool, man. It's chill. It's chill. Respect. I've just shown my respect.
Do you feel about that even when you take out celebrating goals? Because someone like Sebastian Haller, that was his style of celebrating. And a lot of West Ham fans got onto him about that. But when he scored a goal, that's his thing. He doesn't explode and celebrate and run around the place. He's just that's his style. So do you feel about that just in general? It's not just... I like seeing players celebrate properly.
I think we all like to see passion, and I think we all like to, as you said, especially when you would rather see someone celebrate for your team than not celebrate. That's for sure. As I said, as Matt alluded to with the Sebastian Haller thing, and I do get why some fans were kind of going, oh, he's not, his heart's not in it, because he's not celebrating, and it turns out his heart probably wasn't in it. But I wouldn't say that the celebration was really made much difference either way. But yeah, no, I think people are different, and people have different emotions. And I get what you're saying, that, if any of us three scored a goal at any kind of level like that, of course we're going to go fucking nuts, because we're not, we to us, it would be such a luxury, such a privilege. And unfortunately, when players do that day in, day out, though you do want to see passion, they aren't going to treat scoring a goal the same way that we would treat scoring a goal, because they would see it as them just doing their job.
But that's why it's annoying for me, seeing it. That's what I'm saying.
I hear that.
And I also think, when you see... I just think as a fan, you want to celebrate with your players as well. That's the other thing. And when they're not, it doesn't feel like they're in it, and you're oh, well, maybe it was not that exciting. again, as you say, it's unpopular opinions. It was going to create some tension.
Absolutely.
But that's one that's it's been a particular bugbear of mine for a long time. So
no. I do remember speaking on that before, and as I said, I do get where you're coming from, because personally, I would rather see my players celebrate if they scored against an old team. But on the flip side of that, it's not something that would necessarily bother me if they didn't, unless, the circumstances were really, if we needed to win that game to stay up or something, then I'd be like, I feel like most players would then go nuts even if it was their old team. But
yeah, but you do see it where they even don't do it then. That's my point. There are some people that wouldn't even do it then.
No, I think it's definitely an unpopular opinion, Simon.
No, I do think it's a good talking point. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's half time. Thank you so much for listening to part 1 of this Mid-Table and Up podcast episode. Part 2 will be available to listen to very soon. If you enjoy our content, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Be sure to download us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast and SoundCloud. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in parts 2.